James with BlackRain79.com, and today I want to talk about my HUD setup at the micros, and I guess specifically why I use the stats that I do and why I don't use some others. I guess before I get started, some people might not even know what a HUD is, and that's fine. It stands for Heads Up Display. Other people might know what it is, but they don't. They want to know if you have to have one in order to win at online poker. And there's also a bunch of people out there who just straight up think it's cheating. They think it's quote unquote not real poker. I don't really want to get into all of these questions in this specific video because I think that a lot of people that are watching this video already know the answers to these questions. So I wrote a recent blog post entitled "Can You Win at Poker Without Using a HUD?" and it will be linked below this video, and that will answer all of those questions, so you can go check that out. Another post that I'm actually going to link below this video as well is the most popular post in the history of my website, which talks about how to set up your HUD. Some of you might actually be watching this video from that post. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over both the light and full versions of my HUD, which you can actually just download for free in that article and use for yourself right away at the tables. So if you're using Poker Tracker 4, which you see here, and I should quickly mention a lot of people use Hold'em Manager 2 as well, and there's nothing wrong with that program at all. The statistics that I talk about, you know, they're often going to have a different name, and you're just going to have to manually enter the stats yourself. But it's certainly doable in that program as well. You don't need Poker Tracker 4 to do this. A lot of people ask me, why do I use Poker Tracker 4 over Hold'em Manager? Again, they're both great programs. They're actually both owned by the same company now. They just recently merged. I think Poker Tracker 4 is just, it's a little bit more user friendly. It just seems to make more sense to me personally. So like I said, you can import those my two HUD profiles by just going to options here and import profile after you download them from the article on my website. So if you hit the drop down menu here in the HUD profile editor, you'll see all of the HUD profiles that are already installed. And actually, I should say the top two are the custom HUDs that I have created. The reason why I created these is because I think that a lot of the pre-installed HUD profiles that come with Poker Tracker 4 are just not very good. Like for instance, the cache default here. Let's have a look at that. First off, it only includes basically, about 5 stats. I don't include the player name. And a lot of these stats are honestly, frankly, pretty useless. There's a lot of really, really important stats missing, like 3-bet, the entire post-flop. Post-flop's pretty important in poker. There's no post-flop stats here. Well, I guess total aggression frequency is technically it is. It's a post-flop stat, but I think that total aggression factor is a much better indicator of that. Live amount of big blinds is just silly. You can just look at the guy's stack on the table. Why do you need that in your HUD? So, these default HUD setups here that come with, I'm pretty sure it's the same thing with Hold'em Manager, are pretty ridiculously bad. So that is why I've created two custom HUDs. And so I'm going to go over them really quick here. First, I'm going to start with the light version. And I call it the light version because I recommend it for people who are playing like NL2, NL4, NL5, perhaps NL10 as well. And I call it the light version because it's just a slimmed down version that just basically includes, I think, everything that is essential for those stakes. You don't need all these fancy float bet stats and stuff that I'll talk about in the full version in a sec. As I talk about in all my blog posts, videos, books, and stuff like that, it's really just about keeping it simple at these stakes and learning the fundamentals is really just the best way to achieve success at those stakes. So the first thing you always want to have is player name, of course. It should go without saying that if you've got the stats on the wrong guy, that's really, really bad, dangerous, all that. The only thing worse than not having any information at all is having the wrong information. So make sure the player name is always first, of course, and then number of hands has to be second. Sample size is incredibly important with all of the stats on your HUD, and you need to know how many hands that you have on the person. And after that, so also, and by the way, you can see the preview, of course, on the top, the bottom right here, and that is what it will look like on your poker table. After that, I have VPIP, PFR, and Total AF. And these are like the classic big three, sort of, I call them. I mean, you can honestly just base 90% of your decisions at the poker table on these three stats. VPIP essentially meaning voluntarily put money in pot, which is basically the percentage of hands that they're playing. PFR is pre-flop raise, which is the percentage of hands that they're raising with. And total AF is, AF stands for aggression factor, is really just a mathematical indication of how aggressive or passive they are after the flop. On the second row, I have pre-flop stats, which are fold to steal. I have fold to 3 bets, and I have 3 bets. Again, just keeping it super simple. Just the most basic stuff that you need for these kind of situations at the super low end of the micros. And the final rows, row 3, the next thing, I mean, rows 3 and 4 are both post-flop, I should say. Rows 3 is all about if they fold to c-bets on the flop, turn, and river. Usually when I see the flop, I'm the one who's either raised or re-raised pre-flop. I'm usually in control of the hand, so obviously I want to know, can I get this person to fold if I bet? Can I get them to fold if I bet twice? Can I get them to fold if I bet 3 times? It just makes things easy, of course, to keep applying pressure on them. And the final row is how much my opponent, c-bets the flop, turn, and river. So super sort of fundamental, bare bones kind of HUD, gives you all the information that I think you need at the tables. Especially at the lowest stakes. And it should always be noted that you can always, at the poker table, you can always just click on the player name, just left click on it, and it will bring up the full pop-up, which will allow you to have access to every stat in the universe on the player if there's something that you need, for instance like donk bet or something that's not included on your HUD. And the same thing goes with Hold'em Manager as well. Let's look at my full HUD now. And so you're going to see right away, I mean you can see the preview in the bottom right here, that there's a lot more stats. I think there's about 7 more stats on this, so I'm going to go through those. What I want to mention briefly, and I talk about this in the article as well in more detail, is when you have this many stats, a lot of time it can be like information overload on your screen, and a lot of times it just won't fit like on the poker table depending on your screen size and the size of the table. So what you can do, and what I do all the time, is I adjust the font in here. I mean 6 seems to work for me on my little 15-inch laptop here and the size of the tables that I have, but you can increase that or decrease it depending on your setup. And the other thing, if you want to save space, you'll notice that I use all of these prefixes like F, if you're following the cursor here, F3B, which is fold to 3-bet. If you've memorized, like if you are using my HUD and you've memorized what all of these numbers mean, you can just remove the prefix. So for instance, if we go to that, you can go in here and you can see under prefix that I have F3B, and you can just, just delete that, of course. So that will obviously save a lot more space on your screen as well, because you can see that I've got prefixes for basically everything here. So let's go through my full HUD setup here. So once again, we got player name. There's going to be some crossover, of course, with the light version. Once again, player name, most important thing. Number of hands, insanely important. Number 2. No changes there, and then no changes on the next 3 stats either. Again, the big 3, VPIP, PFR, and Total AF. After that, also on the first row, I include fold to steal and attempt to steal. And this just gives me, now that I have attempt to steal as well, it gives me more information just sort of on late position sort of steal situations on, how the player, how much they're stealing and how much they fold to steals, of course. On the second row, I now have more pre-flop stats, which and an expanded amount here because I now have information on 4-bet as well. So we got the fold to 3-bet and fold to 4-bets. And the reason why is we want to include 4-bet because once you get to about NL10, but definitely NL25, people start 4-betting a little bit more. They don't always have aces and kings. They sometimes they even got a bluff. They got some sort of suited connector or suited ace or something like that. But I mean, people just 4-bet a wider range in general when you get to higher stakes. A hand like jacks becomes an automatic 4-bet at a lot of higher stakes, whereas that's just a call at NL5 or something, right? So we want to have 4-bet stats. I've got their 3-bet preflop, of course, and I use this stat 4-bet ratio. I think it's superior to 4-bets percentage because ratio really it's a mathematical factor once again, just like total AF. And really what it does though is it allows you to, it gives you a number that basically indicates what their range is. Whereas I find with the 4-bet percentage stat, you need a super, super big sample, and still a lot of the time it's not as accurate as this stat as far as I'm concerned. On the third row, I have same thing as the light version. I've got the folds, their fold, my opponent's fold to flop c-bet, fold to turn c-bet, and fold to river c-bet. The fourth line, again, there's no difference from the light version. We got their c-bet flop, their c-bet turn, their c-bet river. So the final row on the full version of my HUD is really where I've got some sort of fancy stats that I use just for taking that are post-flop stats and just for taking different lines at higher stakes versus the much better regs that you'll encounter. Whereas I talk about, like in my first book, for instance, Crushing the Microstakes, I really just talk about keeping things incredibly simple versus the sort of tight, sort of non-thinking regs that you'll encounter a lot at NL2, NL5, and just taking a lot of the same lines again and again because they're not really paying attention. Like you don't really have to mix things up much because they're just 18 tabling away and on autopilot, and they're really just not paying attention to you. That's not really the case by the time you get to NL25, so you need to mix things up a lot, especially against the better competition there. So I'm going to be taking a lot more varied lines against the regs at those stakes. I'm going to be raising flops, raising turns, floating flops, floating turns, donk betting, taking all sorts of non-standard lines. I'll be, as the preflop raiser, I'll be check raising more often. I'll be check raising the turn. I'll be, sometimes even bluff raising the river. So all sorts of different lines and that I want to be able to take. So I've got some information on those. So the first one is fold to raise after flop c-bet. So I just want to know, like, if I'm the preflop caller and they make a c-bet, how often are they going to fold if I raise? The second one will be for the turn. If they make a c-bet on the turn, if I raise, what are the chances that they're going to be folding? Of course, you need a lot of, you need a big sample when you're talking about turn and river bets, or turn and river situations. And the same thing goes for 4-bets as well. So just keep that in mind with this HUD. That with those, you need to be really cognizant of the sample size. And finally, I've got fold to turn float bet, as you see here. I just want to know if I were to float them on the flop. Float would be, they make their c-bet, I call in position, and then they check to me on the turn. How often are they gonna fold when I make that the float bet now on the turn? And the last one is just the river one. If I float 2 streets, the flop and the turn, and they check to me on the river, and I make a bet, how often are they going to fold? So hopefully that gives you guys a decent idea of the 2 different HUDs that I use. Like I said, I would recommend using the light version if you're playing at the lowest stakes, and once you move up to about NL10, definitely NL25, you might want to start. You might want to add a few more stats like this. I should mention, I don't think that these are the only stats in the world you should use. That somehow my HUD setups are God's gift to poker or something like that. There's if you want to mess with these stats, you can just hit the plus or the minus here to add statistics, remove them, add lines. We've already talked about up in the upper right here how you can change the color, you can change the font, you can take out the prefixes. So that's there's a lot of customization, which I talk about in the article, of course, as well. But I hope that helped you guys here with HUD setup and just explaining more of the HUD that I use. So thanks a lot for watching this video, guys. This has been Nathan Williams with BlackRain79.com.